Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm excited to welcome you to our Quartzy University series about inventory management. And today we're going to be talking about best practices for keeping your inventory accurate and up to date. I'm Libby. I'm a customer success manager at Quartzy. And I'm so excited to introduce you to one of my coworkers, Samantha Savage. She is also a customer success manager at Quartzy and a former lab manager and former Quartzy user. So she has a ton of experience with the software. Just as a reminder, if you have any questions throughout the session, please feel free to throw them into the Q&A portion at the bottom of the screen. We'll answer some of them live and we'll type answers to some of them as well. So we'll make sure we respond to you as soon as you put something in that chat. And for now, I'll throw you to Samantha.
Great. Thank you so much, Libby. Thanks, everybody, for joining us today. This is the second session in our inventory management series, and we're going to be going through best practices today. All right. So I wanted to start by just orienting you to a few of your resources. We do have this Quartzy University page that will show you all of our webinars and learnings that you have available to you. Also, if Quartzy is showing up at an event near you, check that out as well. It's all listed here on our upcoming events page. We also have our Quartzy blog. This is an excellent resource for articles about how to do different processes, updates from our suppliers, all sorts of information. This is an excellent resource, and you can just click on this link and subscribe. And I'll mention also, I will be sending you a copy of this PowerPoint today, so you'll have all of these links and a copy of these recordings that we're doing today. And then we have the Quartzy support site. This is your resource for step-by-step instructions and instructional videos that are available through Quartzy support. And we have several different resources for you here, really on how to do anything in Quartzy. And then we also have our Quartzy LinkedIn Lab Managers group. This is designed to be a forum for other lab managers to share details about how they're using Quartzy, as well as other softwares to help with lab management. And then here's my contact information. If you are looking to get in contact with your customer success manager for your account, feel free to reach out to support@quartzy.com. All right, so for our inventory management series, last week we did inventory cleanup with Katie, and that's all about adding types and locations, helping you upload your inventory and how you can edit the inventory and create your backups. You can create backups for both the inventory and the request module. Today's session is going to be all about preventative workflows and best practices, and Thursday's session is going to be all about the mobile app and our barcode functionality within the inventory module. So definitely come and check that out as well. And when I send out the copy of this PowerPoint, this will include the link to the first session as well as the second session. And when we complete the final session, we will also send out a copy of that recording. So for today's agenda, I want to start by talking about the difference between the request and the inventory and talk through the connections. There's different information that's tracked in each one of these modules for reasons. And I want to show you kind of how these connections work. Then we're going to edit some information in the inventory. I'll show you the different functionality there. We have some suggestions for tracking items that are used. And then I'll show you how to search and customize the inventory view. We'll look at some filters, and I'll show you how you can export reports from the inventory, and we'll set up some minimum and maximum thresholds. So to start, I thought it would help to orient to what problems Quartzy is looking to solve and help you with. And really, Quartzy is all about helping you to manage the lab supply lifecycle. So we have the request module that is there to help you track all of your orders, like the order aspects of of your supplies. So we have approval workflows. Everyone is adding requests in one module. You can transparently see what's needed in the lab. And then you can update the statuses as items are ordered and then received. When items are received, you have the option to add the item into your inventory. The item in the request module will still be retained when marked received. It'll go into your request history. When the item is added to the inventory, you then have the ability to kind of track more specifically information about those items. So you can track the lot number, cast number, specific experimental details. So you can use the inventory module to really help you identify the items you want to use in your experiments. You can also use it to track your equipment, really anything that you need to track in the lab. When items are running low, you can then re-request the item and it will flow back into this top flow. All right, I'm going to jump into a live demo. We're going to start with the request module. So I just want to orient you. The request module is indicated here. We're in that with this orange line here. And this is your digital shopping list. So I'm going to show you how we push information into the inventory from the request module. So the traditional workflow is when you're marking items received, you're standing in front of your package with all of the items. You have your packing slips, you have all your information. So let's use this one as an example. So I have a PO number. Let's say that's on my packing slip. So I can search the request module and just pull up those items that are on that PO, and then I can mark them received. So I'm going to start by just doing this single item and click mark received. And you see the display here is suggesting I can add this item to my inventory and it's selected by default. And then here I can indicate what my amount in stock is. So I can say I have one of these, one bottle, and then I can indicate my location. So since this is ethanol, I'm going to specify, I'm going to put it in my chemical hood, and then I can add additional sublocations. Now take note of how this looks here. This is an example of a request that was added solely from the request module. It's not pulling any information from any of my items that are existing in my inventory. I'll point this out by comparison to an item that is re-requested from the inventory, and that is the desired flow for items to remain accurate in your inventory count. So I'll go ahead and mark this save and receive. And now that item is populating in my received order history. So I have that information here tracked. So all of my order related information, what grant I purchased it on, what PO it's associated with, all of that is going to remain in the request module. Now, when we move over to the inventory, I'm going to search for that exact same item here. Oh, actually, I have to get the catalog number. So I'm going to look up this particular catalog number in our inventory. And this is now where you would enter more specific information about this chemical. So we're going to scroll down to the different sections. Actually, I'll start here. So if there was a URL populated from the request, it will populate that here as well in your inventory. Likewise, it's pulling over the catalog number, the vendor you purchased it from, your item description, all of that will remain the same, as well as the unit price. And when we scroll to this next section, this is going to display the location that you specified when you marked the item received. And of course, you can always change that as well. And then here, this section is all about the type and the type specific fields that are being tracked for that type. So down here, you see I have options to enter in dates. I can choose from the drop down. There are several format options for you for any of your fields. You do have the ability to add your own custom fields as well, and you can specify the format for those. And this next section is your specs area. Now, this is where you're going to specify if you want to track expiration dates, you can track them here. You can set up auto reminders that will essentially email the item owner and let them know that this item is nearing the expiration. Here's where you can add in your lot numbers and your cast numbers. So note that this is not at the request level, it's within the inventory that you'll be adding your specific details about the products. Now I have seen it in practice where labs need to know that lot number when placing the order. So you can incorporate that into your item description. Then every time it's re-requested, your person who's ordering, your lab manager or your admin can see that information and know that you need that particular lot number. Same with CAS number. It's a great reference point when purchasing. So that's kind of the difference between the two modules. Inventory is really specific, kind of more granular about what you need to know for your experiments. And the request module is designed to help you track all the details that are related to actually ordering the items. And then you also have that same history audit trail that we have in the requests module, but it's relative to the inventory. So you see when the item was received, you see who last updated it and who added it to the inventory. I'm going to pause here and ask if there are any questions.
Yes, we have some great questions rolling in. The first question for you, can you attach files when submitting a request? If so, will the file carry over once it's moved to the inventory?
Excellent question. So you do have the ability to attach a file both in the request module and the inventory. It's this little upload file option here. The documents themselves do not transfer from the request module to the inventory. That is a feature request, and we will ensure that you get that feedback gets back to our product team, but that is not currently available.
We have another good question. Is there a way to set up recurring requests or standing orders?
That's also, yes, a very good question. Currently, there isn't a function in Quartzy to track that kind of order. It is something that we're interested in. As far as from purchasing from Quartzy as a vendor, we are working on setting up a standing order option. It is going to require quite a bit of development, but we are working on looking at that early next year.
Wonderful. Is there a good place to add a safety data sheet to an item?
Absolutely. And again, in the context of the information that you might need to do an experiment, I think the best place to upload that information will be in the inventory for that item right here with this upload file. That's going to be the best place to store that information. Yeah.
Another great question about inventory files. Can you add more than one file to the inventory? For example, a safety data sheet and a standard operating procedure?
Absolutely. Yes, there is no limit to how many documents you upload to an inventory item or a request. So in both places, you can upload as many files as you need to.
Another file question, if you attach a file and you export the inventory, will those files attach too?
Yes, that is a common question. So the data that pulls out into our export templates, this is relative. So the export itself is actually a CSV or an Excel document, depending on the direction. So there isn't an ability to pull your actual files that are attached. It's really just going to pull the Excel equivalent data that it can. That is a feature request we hear often. I also want to mention that, of course, you can always kind of cross-reference that export with the uploads, or rather the attached files that are on your items. So you can always kind of cross-reference both, but that's a great question, yeah.
Great. We touched on this a little bit, but when/where is the best place to add a CAS number?
Yeah, so the CAS number will go underneath this specs area, and this is the only location that you can track it, that has a specific field place for that information. However, you can add the CAS number to the item description in the similar format that I mentioned, the lot number. So you could add the CAS number for the ethanol here, and then when re-requesting the item from the inventory, as well as in the request module through the add request workflow, it will pull up that same item description. So you'll be able to retain that when making that purchase.
Okay, another one. Is there an option to save price quotes other than attaching them to individual orders?
Oh, yes. So we do get that request pretty often. There is not a way for us to add that information currently. The best way to ensure that your pricing is accurate and updated is to import your pricing. Again, you will need to update it each time that you order an item if the price changes or if you're re-requesting the item, but we don't have a way for you to reflect that change. Yeah.
All right, and we have one more before moving along. What is the difference, if any, for re-requesting an item through the inventory tab versus re-requesting it through the request tab in the received section?
Yes, that's a great question. So essentially what's happening behind the scenes is that every item that is going into the inventory is getting an automatic serial number assigned to it. So when you re-request from the inventory, you're actually re-requesting from that exact item. So it's going to recognize that this item is already present in the inventory when you're marking it received in the request module. So you have two, well, sort of three options for re-requesting from the inventory. So when you're in the inventory module itself, this is fairly easy. You can just click this request button, and then this is going to take you to the request form. So you're going to have the option here to, again, update your price. And then here under this caret, this is where you're going to add in your request details. You can change the type, you can add in your grant ID, and then you can add in your URL if that's not already populated. And again, this upload file option here, this is going to go into the request module. So you can upload a file here if you have that even coming from the inventory itself. So then we'll click request, and then this is going to send that request over to the request module. It's still going to retain that same item in your inventory. It's just adding a request in your new tab here. Now, by contrast, you can request items from the request module that is pulling from the lookup the items that are present in your inventory. So when we click on that, I'll go back and click that again. So we're going to use this add request button. And then let's say we're looking for ethanol, for example. In this lookup form, you're also going to see inventory show up. So I would scroll to the third section where you're going to see inventory. This is going to be a re-request from the inventory. Now, if you choose one of these other options, if you choose to select a request from the Quartzy shop, or you choose this request history option here, it's going to create a brand new request, and it will not be able to connect to the item is already in your inventory. We are working on streamlining this process a little bit and making it a little bit more clear, both to ensure that this process is easier, as well as clear that re-requesting from the inventory is what you want if you want to replace an existing item. Great. All right. I'm going to navigate back to the inventory and we'll kind of move along, but I'll check for questions again shortly. Okay, so I also want to point out this global search. This is an excellent way to kind of figure out what's already in your request module inventory, and then you can also look for items within the shop. So for this item, I'm going to just put that I want to look for DMEM media. So I'm going to search to see what I have available. And you see I have 9 entries in my inventory, and it does display the location. So I could go look in those locations and see if there's some I can use for my experiment. I also can see anything that's currently in flight or has been recently received in the request module. And then I can also search the Quartzy shop. So to ensure that I'm not creating a duplicate entry, I can go straight into the inventory module here and then just re-request. We want to make this as easy as possible. So we recognize that this global search doesn't give you the option to just re-request right here. That should definitely be a little bit easier. So our team is actually actively working on making more options here to create an action. Okay. And then I want to show you that workflow when you mark an item received that is an item that was just replenished from the inventory. So I'm going to go ahead and move this request along in the pipeline so you can see what it looks like when it's ready to be received. So now this item is in my order tab. And when I mark it received, you'll see that it pulls the information from my inventory. So it knows that I have this amount in stock here. It's even going to pull the previous location of the existing item. So it's recognizing that item that is in my inventory. And I can always change this if I'm going to put it in a different place. And then you have this option here. We're going to update the existing item. And this is actually a good point to point out. So it's going to ask you if you just want to replace the current existing quantity. So if you're going to add this in addition to the item that is already in your inventory, you're going to want to update this to 2, for example. And then by contrast, if you want to add this as a brand new item, it's going to create a second entry in your inventory. So keep that in mind. And then I'll click save. And that is both adding this item into my request history again, and then it's also adding it into the inventory. Okay. Any questions about that workflow?
A few questions have popped up. So I think we kind of covered this a little bit with the global search, but some Quartzy lab members have a hard time remembering to click over to the inventory to see an item's location. Is it possible to list the location of an item when it appears under the request tab?
Yes, very, very good point. Very good question. So because this process of receiving the item is creating an entry into the inventory, that's where it's designed to kind of transfer over. So now you're going to navigate to the inventory to see the location. But yes, I think this is an excellent time to use the global search because you can see the item in the inventory and then you can see the location. So if we do that DMEM example again, you can see the actual location. So it does make that process a little bit more straightforward.
And then another good question, is there a way to have a report of deleted items?
Yes, that's a great question. So that actually leads me to the options for showing items that are depleted. So let's use this DMSO as an example here. So you have the ability to create this as a 0 entry. So you can actually track that this item has been depleted, but you want to keep it in the request module. So in that question, I would say you could go through those items that are depleted and then export those items into the Excel template here and keep that as like your archive record of these are all the depleted items. For a clean inventory, I suggest that you do actually delete the items from the inventory. Again, when you delete an item from the inventory, it does not delete it from your request history. So you'll always have that record that you have purchased that item previously. So this is really just to help clean up your inventory. But if it's crucial to you that you are keeping track of items that are depleted, then you can utilize this, this 0 quantity amount in stock to reflect that. Great question.
Thank you. That was a great answer. So another question, how do you change owners for an item?
Yes, that is a frequently asked question. So to clarify, if there is ever an item in the inventory or in the request module that was requested or added by a person who's no longer a member of the lab, you will still have this recorded record in Quartzy unless you change it. So an admin or if you have the lab settings specify that anybody can edit your inventory, you'll have the ability to change the owner here. And it's just this drop down. It's only going to display current members. So keep that in mind. If you want that historical record and it's not, but you still want to update the owner, the current owner, you can always add it as a custom field. So you can add in, original owner to be able to track that information. But it's fairly easy to change the owners. I will note that if you export your requests and you want to update them, and it includes an owner that is no longer a member of the lab, it will give you an error when you basically take information out of Quartzy and bring it back in. It's expecting to compare it to the most accurate data that's already present in Quartzy. So if a member has left the lab, then it's going to ask you, well, who should this item belong to now? So just keep that in mind when you're working with updates.
Wonderful. Another question, can you search by the fields that you add to the types? So if I made a custom field for flammable, could I search and find all flammable chemicals?
Yes, you absolutely can. So let's go ahead and go through that example. So to add a custom field, you're going to go up here to your little lab navigator and you'll click this little caret. And then you're going to go over to this gear icon for the lab you want to change the setting for. Then we're going to navigate to the inventory types. So let's use that example for chemicals. If you want to track that it's specifically flammable, you can add the custom field right here. So I'm going to say, maybe I'll just say hazard level. Oh no, I'll just use flammable for this. So I can say flammable, and then I'll have, I'll just use single line text and then click save. So now every chemical that's in my inventory is going to have this additional field, even the items that were already existing there. So then we'll navigate back out to our inventory module. And I'm going to add that to, look for ethanol. Let's add that to our ethanol. So I'll go to my chemical details and then I'll specify yes here. I also think, so because we're making this a custom field, it's going to show up when you search, it's going to show you everything that has flammable referenced. So definitely keep that in mind. I think probably the best use case of tracking your flammables is to add it into your location. So you can say, flammables cabinet, or you can add it into the item details or the item description so that it will pull up those exact items. Any follow-up questions on that one? And here's where it does pull up that particular item.
I think that was a great answer. We do have another question. Is there a way to filter items in the inventory that are approaching their expiration date?
Oh, yes. So there isn't a direct way to filter based on expiration date, but we do have a possible workaround. So let's say that this antibody is nearing expiration date. So I can go down here and I'm going to specify my expiration. Let's say that is going to be at the end of the month. And then I can even add in, I mentioned earlier that we have this email reminder option. So I can specify that here. And then over here, up here on this customized view option, let's click that little gear icon. You can pull expiration date in as a column up here, and then you could sort. So then it'll show you your expiration date. So you'd be able to display those. And while we're talking about customized view, I'll also show you relative to the filters along this left-hand side, how you can utilize those. So when we are filtered on a particular chemical, for example, you can pull in those customized view or those customized fields within your custom view. So with that example of the items that were flammable, you could always pull that in as a column. So you can have that detail right there when you're pulling this information. And then you can, of course, deselect any of our standard fields.
Great. Another good question. Is it possible to move all of the contents of one location to another?
Yes, that is a great use case of our export template. So let's run through what that kind of looks like. Let's say I want to export all of my tissue culture supplies. And I also want to mention you can add multiple filters here as well. So if there, maybe you want to just do all of the inventory for Amy or Emily, it could choose those, or it could also do it by location. So if I want to just filter and export and update my fridge #1 tissue culture supplies, then I can export that. So I'm going to go ahead and export relative to my current filters. So I'll select that. And it's going to create this Excel document that has all of the serial numbers that are specific to those items in your inventory. So I'm going to click on this tab, and remember I had specifically filtered to only look at my tissue culture supplies. So now you see I have that serial number referenced here, and I can make updates to any of this information, the location, the sublocation. I can I can update the price if I want to, add additional details, can update anything here. One thing you are able to batch update is the minimum and maximum stock quantities. So I just want to point that out briefly. And I haven't shown you what that looks like in the application yet, but you will have to do those manually for now. We are working on making an improvement to that in the future. So here, yes, of course, you can change your locations. You can move all those items into their different locations. You also can use this template to delete items from your inventory in a batch way, or you can also add new items. So if you want to add a brand new item, you can just skip that serial number field. And when you import it into Quartzy, it's going to update all of the information and add any of those items that didn't have a serial number and assign one to them.
Great. So we did just kind of touch on this, but just since it came up in the chat, for the min-max stock count feature to work, does it need to be manually updated every time?
Yes, it does. That is something that our product team is working on, but yes, currently it is a manual update on each item. And let's go ahead and jump into what that feature looks like. So I'm on this polyclonal antibody, the donkey antigoat, and here you see that I have in each item, you have the ability to set a minimum and maximum quantity. So if I want that to be 1 here, and then maybe my order up to quantity, I always want to have 5 in stock. So I can update that here. So then when I re-request the item, I know I need to re-request up to 5. And then you see when you set that threshold, it displays here in the inventory table, so you can easily see them. Likewise, if you are not at the minimum quantity, you see that a little low stock alert it disappears. So it only shows up when you have reached that minimum stock level. And then a really great feature that's associated with this is over here when you're using these filters, you have the ability to filter just for the items that are low stock. So this is a really great way for the lab manager to come through and go ahead and re-request items that are running low. When these items reach the minimum quantity, there's an automatic email that's being sent to the item owner to remind them that they need to re-request that item because it's reached this minimum stock level.
I think that was all of our questions for now. So we'll continue on and really go through everything once we reach the end, I think.
Great, wonderful. That sounds excellent. So the last couple of things that I wanted to kind of go through today was showing you how you can also duplicate items and update any information you need to. So let's go ahead and do that with the xylene. I'm going to go through that one. So here, again, I pointed out that you have the ability to change the location. You can do this by item, or you can do it with the export template. Then we have that type section here. So then you can go in and add additional details, information that you need to track. And you can, of course, change the format of these. I will say if you have existing data in these fields and you want to change the format, it will give you an error. So that's something to keep in mind when you're creating these fields. Ensure that you have all of the information you want to include and you have the format that you'd like to kind of standardize. But you are always able to add additional custom fields as we went through earlier. Great. And then, of course, you have this section to add in your other details. Okay. And then we often get questions about using freezer boxes. So I wanted to point that out as well. So up here again, we're going to go to our lab navigator and go over to this little gear icon. And I'll navigate to the location section. So this is where you can add in your various locations, and then you can add in additional sublocations. Now, I know Katie went through this pretty extensively, so I just wanted to point it out briefly that you have the ability to add sublocations, and you can move these items around to different locations if you want to, or even duplicate items. Okay. All right. Well, I believe that's all I was going to go through. Let's go ahead and open up for the remaining questions.
All right, we've already had a few roll in. So the first question is, when I receive orders for items with an existing lot number, meaning I still have some in stock, the system creates a new entry rather than simply adding to the existing total. Is there a way to change this?
Yes, so that is likely a likely use case scenario where that item has been re-requested, but not from the inventory. So I think this new preventative workflow of re-requesting from the inventory will solve that issue because you're going to be actually re-requesting from that exact same item. If you do end up getting a duplicate like that, let's show you an example. So let's say I have so many for DMEM, right? So this is a use case where, yeah, these were just so many requests were added and I wasn't just re-requesting from the inventory. So this one has the same exact catalog number. So let's say I just want to condense these down. It's something super easy you can do. So let's say I want to use this particular entry. And again, you could have that lot number specified here so you know exactly which ones were duplicated and you can kind of condense them down. So let's say I actually have 3 cases of this because I'm adding the totals here. And then I can actually go through and just delete these so that I only have that single entry representing all of the cases of DMEM that I have with this particular catalog number.
Great. Something related to kind of what we were just talking about a moment ago. When you edit a custom field name, does it edit existing items with the original custom field name? Is it better to do with import-export functions?
Yes, that's a great question. So you can absolutely change the field. I would recommend that you change the field name in the lab settings and then do your import-export or export-import rather. So let's use an example. Let's say I'm going to use this ethanol, and I want to change the name of one of these fields. So let's say I want to change RFID to barcode. So I'm going to go into my lab settings, and then I'm going to go over to inventory types and go down to that field. You'll click this tiny pencil, and then you can change the name of that. So if we just want to call it barcode instead, like I decided I didn't want to do RFID, I can save that. And if you change the name of the field, it will update in the inventory. So let's show you what that looks like now. We'll go over to the inventory tab. And then when we're looking at our chemicals and we look at that specific field, you now see that it is named differently. Oh, actually, I think I just need a refresh. We'll go to our chemical details here.
Oh, it just moved up since it's alphabetical.
Oh, thank you,
There we
Libby.
go.
Yes, it's right here. So yes, it will update, and it will update for the entire type. So as you enter new items, that field will be present, and it will also be updated for all of your existing items. And if you want to update the information now that it's there and you want to add in all of those barcodes and update it, you could use the Excel template. That would probably be the easiest way to do that.
Great. Another question about imports and exports. If you export items, are they removed from the inventory? What would happen if you were to import those same items, but their location was changed? Would it create another entry of the items inside the inventory?
Excellent question. So when we're using our export template, when we went through that exercise of exporting to the inventory, remember that they're all associated with these serial numbers. So if you make edits to those items, you'll save this sheet and you'll re-import it into Quartzy. It's going to look for that serial number and make those edits. So it's going to be the exact same template that you're using to export to import. So it's just going to reference if there's any changes to that particular serial number, and then it will make those changes. Now, by contrast, if you use the import template, that one does not include barcodes because those items it's intended for uploading brand new items into the inventory. So if you did use it for that purpose, it would create duplicate entries in your inventory. So you want to make sure when you are doing that export functionality, and we even have this as part of the import section for that reason, to remind you, if you're editing and deleting items, you want to export your inventory first. If you're adding brand new items, you're going to download the template, add the information, and then import it.
We have another pretty related question. Do I have to save the export file to update existing items? How does it know I changed something?
Yes, you will need to save it, and then you will import it with the import inventory section. Yeah, there's no behind the scenes macro that is connecting that Excel template to the Quartzy inventory. You still need to import it back into Quartzy to make those updates.
We have another one that we're going to talk a little bit more about on Thursday, but are Quartzy serial numbers attached to the barcodes?
Yes, great question. And yes, Libby will be going through that next week, or sorry, Thursday. So here, I'll show you where you can find that serial number. So it's located right up here in this right-hand corner, and you can even use these to search items. So when you're using the web-based version, you can always use these serial numbers to search and pull up those exact items. With the barcodes, let me just click on this little box here. So the way you print barcodes is by selecting the box next to the item, and then you have the ability to print it. Now you'll see in that template, there's a number at the beginning of it, and then that's just your account number relative to your lab. And then you'll also see the serial number is that next number. So you can use that barcode when using the Quartzy mobile app to easily pull up that inventory item. You'll then be able to update the quantity. You'll be able to re-request. And just recently, actually today, was released that you could mark items received as well and upload your packing slips. But Libby will go through all of those details in a couple days.
Yeah, we just had a couple more questions that are going to be a little bit related to that. So I'm going to throw out a couple of answers as well, if that's okay. So we just got one, is there a way to search your inventory by serial number? Yes, you can absolutely do that. Samantha just popped that into her other explanation. And then we did have a question, can I use a traditional scanner for barcode reading? And how does Quartzy link the scanner to the Quartzy inventory? You can definitely use, a traditional barcode scanner or an outside barcoding system altogether. If you want to use that for your inventory, you would generally either design your barcodes to reflect our serial numbers, as Samantha was mentioning, or if your barcode system is creating its own numbers, definitely reach out. We can essentially just use custom fields to make it so that your barcode scanner can search its own generated numbers in our inventory. And the way that the mobile app works is essentially just a pretty simple search based on the fact that the barcode is encoding an item's serial number. So that's the same way that it will work for a traditional scanner as well. So definitely reach out if you need any help customizing those sorts of things. And yeah, we'll talk about barcodes a lot more on Thursday. So another question for you, Samantha, is there a way where Quartzy can merge duplicates together, including their stock numbers? We talked about that a little bit ago, but maybe we can just go over it one more time.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, so let's do that with, I think I might have an extra entry for sodium nitrate. Oh, we'll use the DMEM example again. I have these other two. So let's pretend that these are the same catalog number and I want to merge the entries together. So here I have two separate entries and I have two total units. So I can update the one that I want to remain in the inventory to reflect that other quantity. And then I can just delete this other item. So I can select multiple here. I can use that bulk action. And then I can delete and I can also duplicate. So that's actually a great one to reference. We have the ability for you to duplicate items. So if maybe you get an antibody and it turns out it was actually a different lot number than you had re-requested, but you still want to keep it, you could add that as an additional entry, or you could even use this to duplicate, like for aliquots, you could duplicate an item as well. And again, it will go into this flow, ask you, what's the amount in stock? What do you want to include? You can add in all the type specific custom fields, and then you'll just now see that there's a duplicate entry for that exact same item. So you see the catalog number changed. So that's a way you can update it. And then again, I'll have to update this one.
We had another great question. Does Quartzy generate the serial number automatically?
Yes, it does. So when an item is marked received in the request module, it will automatically assign a serial number. And likewise, if you add a brand new item, either through this add item flow here, or if you import or add one in the export template, it will automatically assign that serial number for you. Yes. Excellent question. And I realized when we were going through this low stock filter, I didn't mention how you can easily re-request using this filter. So when you're on this low stock quantity option, you can actually choose to re-request the items right here from this bulk action up here. So you can either do it, single line item by line item, or you can do it in a batch way. So, the lab manager can come through and see any items that need to be re-requested, and then it's going to show you the request form similar to all of the other workflows when you re-request an item. Now, if an item is a duplicate entry, it will also give you a little notification up here to let you know that that item is already in the request module, helping you to not duplicate again requests or even receive additional material than you would like to purchase and order.
Okay, we have a question about order status. How often is the status of items ordered through Quartzy updated? The real-time status of our orders does not always match the status displayed.
Ah, I see. And that sounds like that is specific to the Quartzy order. So we do actually update this pretty often. I mean, as often as possible, to be truthful. As soon as we get information from the vendor that this item has been received, or if it's on back order, we will display this as soon as we receive that information, pretty much immediately. So if there is ever a question, or you realize that the status that's displayed here isn't accurate, like maybe the package is sitting right there in front of you and we're saying we're not sure when it's going to arrive, you can, of course, ask a question using this little Quartzy modal down here, and just reference that Quartzy order number, and our team can answer any of those questions, and we can update the app for you. So if there is a change or a discrepancy, our team can fix that. Also want to mention that if an item goes on back order, you have the ability to track that in Quartzy as well. And we'll update that for you if we know that an item is on back order that you purchased from Quartzy, but you also have the ability to do that with your non-Quartzy orders as well. So I'll show this example. Let's say for the DMSO, I wanted to indicate that this item is on back order. I have this ability over here. If you click this more caret, you can specify that this item is on back order, and then you can select, how long, and it will display really similarly to the way our order statuses appear for Quartzy items.
That actually goes really well into this next question. What happens when you've ordered an item, but then you're told that the back order is going to be indefinite? How do you reach out to the supplier or cancel the PO?
Yes, great question. I really appreciate that one. So, the times have changed, and sometimes things do go on indefinite back order. So for your Quartzy orders, you can, of course, choose this attempt to cancel option. So keep in mind, and it does give you this little box to indicate this, but our support team will be working directly with that vendor, with that supplier. So it's really dependent on how possible it is to actually cancel that order with the vendor. So you would never have to reach out directly to a vendor if you ordered that item from Quartzy. We would handle all of that for you. But of course, there's situations where the attempt to cancel is not possible. So in the event that something was, already in flight, it's on its way to you, we wouldn't be able to cancel that, but our team could help you to possibly return an item. So really just reaching out to our support team if you have additional questions about that will be your best plan of action. And again, you can use that little support modal down here. Likewise, if there is an item that you ordered from another vendor that it turns out that item is on back order, still, we definitely want you to reach out to us. We want to help you find what you need to do your work. So if there's a possible equivalent match with the exact same specs as the item that you had originally purchased, reaching out to our support team will help us connect you to our life science product specialist team that helps to find equivalent matches. And that really applies to either your Quartzy orders or your non-Quartzy orders.
Great. So we just have a few questions winding down a little bit here. How can our purchasing coordinator differentiate between orders placed through the inventory or orders placed through the request tab?
Yes. So that is not a current it's not something that we're currently tracking in the system. Really, the only way that you can see if that item was requested from the inventory versus the add request flow, specifically kind of removing it being requested from the inventory. is when you mark that item received. I showed you how it looks a little bit different if it's a brand new request versus a request that was requested from the inventory. But we don't currently have a way to track where that original request originated.
Another question was the webinar from last Friday's recording sent out. They weren't able to make it and they would love to be able to watch it.
Yeah, great question. So I believe that they were sent out. However, when I send this out to all of you, it will include a link to that recording, that previous recording. So you'll have everything in one place. And then likewise, when we're finished with today's recording, it will be present right here. And this is a direct link to that recording. So you'll be able to watch that at your leisure.
And then one final question for you here. When will the mobile app have full functionality compared to the web version?
Oh, yes. I love this question because it helps. I think it helps to kind of wrap your head around how the mobile app works and what's its intention. So by design, the Quartzy mobile app focuses on the inventory management aspect because when we did a lot of user testing, we found that the most challenging thing to keep updated was the inventory, and you can probably all imagine why. It's very handy to have something like our mobile app while you're in the lab. You can easily update the quantity, and you need to re-request items. You know, that's really the area where you need that ease of use. Whereas we found that there was, we got significant feedback that actually there's a lot of applications within the web version that are easier to complete with the web version versus the mobile version. So examples would be, you know, actually placing your orders with your vendors. Maybe you need to update pricing. Maybe you need to even marking items ordered. It can be so much easier to track and work with when you're using the web version versus the app. So the app was really designed to help handle that pain point of not being able to easily and quickly update the inventory. Now, that's not to say that we wouldn't necessarily provide more functionality in the future. Specifically, if someone is an approver, they might want the option to just quickly check approve on everything within a mobile app, or be able to easily check out in a cart. So that is something we're reviewing, but essentially the mobile app was really designed to help to keep the inventory up to date.
Yes, and I'm so excited to chat with everyone on Thursday about the mobile app, and we'll talk about the different actions that you can do through it. I think it's actually pretty wonderful that it's so simple now, since it will make it really easy for lab members to use and help you keep things up to date. So I hope to see you all there on Thursday. And Samantha, that was all of our questions for today.
Wonderful. So I just want to give one more plug, of course, for that mobile app. It will be really handy if you go ahead and download it before the webinar on Thursday. That way you can kind of follow along with Libby and see what that functionality is really like while you experience it. So definitely you can use this QR code to scan it, or you can just go on and search the Android Play Store or the Apple App Store, so you can get access to that app. It's right there, and it's all it's now up to date with our new receiving flow. So you should be able to find that functionality as well. And we'd love to get your feedback.
Great. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for attending.